Assalamu alaikum. The topic for my presentation is Ionic. Ionic is a free open source framework for making cross platform apps. You can make apps for iOS, Android, and the web all from a single code base. The advantages of using Ionic is that you don't have to write the same code to make apps on different platforms. It is also simple and has multiple templates already built in, so you don't have to write a lot of code. It supports multiple frameworks like Angular, React, and also Vue. So let's get started with setting up Ionic. Okay, so the first thing that you need to set up Ionic is Node Package Manager. You can download Node.js from nodejs.org. The Node Package Manager comes with it. After that, you're gonna have to write this command npm install -g Ionic. I have already done that. So Ionic 5.4.13 is already installed on my system. After that, in order to start making an app, you're going to have to write Ionic start. It will ask for your app name. I'm just gonna call it test, and you can then select your framework. There's two options, Angular and React. We're going to go with Angular. And then there are some starter templates which you can use from. They have some of the code already written. For our project, we're just going to use blank, and it's setting up the environment. Alright, so it installed. After that, it's asking if I can provide my data for analytics. I'm just gonna say no, and the project has been created. We're gonna change directory to test and open it in code. Okay, so this is the project structure that has been created. Okay, let's go through the project structure. In the package.json file, all the dependencies are listed. We're using Angular, it's listed here, and Ionic version 5. And most of the work that we will be doing is in the source folder. Inside this source folder, there's a lot of files that have been already created. Inside the app folder, you can see there's some component files that exist. All these are Angular related files. We need to have good knowledge of Angular in order to make app on Ionic. Since Ionic works with either React or Angular, so we need to have knowledge about one of these frameworks if we are to make apps on Ionic. This home directory has been created automatically by Ionic CLI. Inside this home directory, there's similar files here as well. Let's go to home page.html. There are some ion tags here. All these are Ionic components. In Ionic title, Ionic, there's some text written, and down here some more text. If we go ahead and launch our app right now, Ionic Serve, by writing Ionic Serve, oops, it will launch the app in the local host and display it in the browser. It's Okay, so here is the same text that was written in the homepage.html. So this is the main page that is displayed when we launch our app. For our app, we will be doing changes in this file and create a simple counter that will count how many times a button has been pressed. So the first thing that we will need is a button. For that, we will go to the UI components site, and here we go to the Ion Fab. We will use one of these plus buttons in our app. The code is given right here. We will use this bottom one, this bottom end one. We'll copy the code and paste it in our home page file. If we save the file and see it in the browser, you can see that this button has been created here. Ionic supports live reloading, so we don't have to reload the page ourselves. Right here, right now it shows this little play button. We can change that by changing the name to add. So now it shows this plus sign. After that, we will have to add a click event to this button. For that, here we will write click is equal to counter. This is the name of the function that will be triggered whenever click is pressed. To define this function, we have to go to the home page component file. This is the component file homepage.ts, and to define our function we have to write it in this homepage class counter. Okay, so in order to keep count of how many times the button has been pressed, we will declare a variable. We will say it's count. Number is equal to 0. This is the TypeScript way of defining variables. And inside the counter we will just increment the count variable. It's giving an error. We have to write this dot count. So now whenever the button is pressed, the count variable will be incremented. We can't see that right now because there is no display of the count. Inside we can change the title to Ionic counter, and to show the count right here we will be using Ionic input component, so that the user can also input any number and the count will start from that number. We went to this Ion input page, and we can just copy one of these lines. We will be using numbers, so we can copy this line and put it in a Ion item tag. For value, we won't be using a fixed value. Instead, we will bind this component to the variable we have in our component file, this count variable. So in order to bind, we have to write ng model here. The syntax of writing ng model is this: ng model is equal to the variable name count. Okay, so Let's see if our app works. There's an error regarding ng model. Oh, this syntax, instead of curly braces you have to write simple brackets, and it's working now. Let's try this. So it's incrementing. We can go ahead now and also add a reset button. Instead of this add icon, we will just write plain text reset, and this will call the reset function. We will just now define the reset function here, which will just make the count 0. Okay, the position of the reset function is also bottom end, and the plus button is also at the bottom end, so they're overlapping. We can change the position of the reset button to start, so they're at opposite ends now. Let's try this. We can reset, and we can also input any random value and it will just start right from there. That is because the ng model is two-way. Anything we write in this input tag will be stored in this variable count, and anything in this count is displayed in the front end of this input tag. So this is how we created this Ionic counter app. The advantage of this is that the advantage of using Ionic is that you can just port this code and create an Android app or an iOS app. And right here we see this is the web application, and this is just how we create apps on Ionic.